So as you can see here, we have like the inside of the case. We have the power source, which is this battery connected to the LiPo writer, making it rechargeable through this USB port as well. And the touch shield, which, as you know, lets us navigate between screens. And we have the antenna, which lets us connect to the network, and the RTC, real-time clock, that lets us keep track of time and date on the phone screen. And on the inner mechanism side, underneath our touch shield, we have the GPRS shield, which lets us connect to the network with our antenna once again, taped down over here. We have to insert a SIM card into the SIM card slot that's gonna let us actually have a number to dial and dial from, so we need service and all that, and that would fit in there. Underneath the GPRS shield is the Arduino, and we have several touch shield connectors here. So we could call the Arduino the brain, GPRS shield the means to connect to the network, and the touch shield the interactable user interface. So one of the main things we need to keep in mind when working on this project was where to solder wires, and one of the key components that used soldering was the Grove RTC. So we needed to extend our connector and make several soldering points on the bottom of the Arduino. The case that we put the Arduino phone in was specially 3D printed to accommodate room for all of the components.
The ones that really stand out to me were some of the smaller ones, where we would test the parts separately, and just getting them to work that first time was really exciting. One I remember in particular was the GPRS. Getting it to connect to the network, there were quite a lot of issues. I remember all three of us were at Sabat's house and we were working for hours and it wasn't happening, and then finally we got it to connect to the network and we made our first phone call. And that was amazing, thinking that we had connected to one of our own cell phones with something that we made ourselves.
Another success that we've had was getting the clock to work, which was a lot of work because with the original code that we had, the clock was showing a standard time and it wasn't moving from that. And then we found out after a while that after reusing a different piece of code, that we had to change the bit of the code around, and then after modifying it, the clock finally worked.
We had to preset the clock's time before running the main cell phone code. And then after the original time had been set, the clock did the rest of the work itself with moving forwards.
One of the other major issues we ended up running into while we were building our cell phone were issues with current and voltage supply. So our main power source for the Arduino phone was a LiPo battery, lithium ion, that was connected to the phone with a LiPo writer, which is basically an adapter that allows the phone to be charged and supply power to the Arduino at the same time. And the issue here was that the battery was not able to provide sufficient current or voltage to make the phone, allow the phone to make calls properly. At most, it loaded up the user interface on the touch shield, but that's not a phone nowadays. So we had to do a lot of experimentation and workarounds to get this to work, and in the end we ended up replacing our initial LiPo writer with the LiPo writer Pro so we could have a higher current output.
One kind of funny experience was when we were troubleshooting a problem where there was a connection that we needed from the Arduino to the touchscreen that wasn't going through with the GPRS shield, was we had to manually wire every single one of these connections just to figure out where the problem was. So that was a bit of an ordeal, but eventually we were able to find the problem, and using these little wires over here, we just created our own little connection right from the Arduino to the touch screen. We had a great time. It really showed a sense for our group to bond and come together. And there were a couple hardships, but we faced them as a team. And with some problem solving and a lot of support from Ms. Patel, we were able to make it work in the end.
Yeah. Shout out to Ms. Patel. Thank you very much for helping us with this project of ours. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to get to the point that we are. And yes, thank you.
You have our seal of approval.